This screencast explores the importance of instructional design in a digital world. So let's start off with a little Simpsons clip here. You will not fight the future. As much as you may want to at times, we can't fight the future. And you can think back to times before cell phones, whether you were a student at that point or you were a teacher, and remember back then and the struggle that went in the early days of cell phones, of fighting text messages, and then as smartphones came around, really exploding the possibilities of how students can be distracted, and the struggle of being a teacher in that sort of environment. And as much as that is a struggle, try not to make it your primary one. We want you to focus on creating instruction where kids will forget about those things, or create a structure in your class where they can be away at times and out at other times. And that's really, you have to find that balance. And we need to provide some modern instruction in the process, that we can't just rely upon the techniques and the strategies that we had when we were in school. We have an amazing tool, and we want to optimize, again, those learning experiences for our students using those tools. Now, one of the kind of, I think, basic elements of being a teacher is also being an instructional designer. Rarely are we, especially at the high school level, handed a curriculum and say, teach this. You might have teams, you might be working with things, maybe you have a book, but we all bring a level of expertise and experience into our classrooms that allow you to create that optimal learning experience. So I like this definition of instructional design, because first it starts off with the process by which instruction is improved. So there is no set instructional method that will work in every instance with every kid. We're always looking to tinker and modify, throw out the window and start over instructional practices that make sure they utilize the tools, they meet the needs of all our students. Second bolded item here, or the first bold item there, is the analysis of learning needs. You really need to know what you need to teach, whether that's the learners that are in the room, the standards, the tools that you have available. You need to see what those learning needs are with your students and the resources available, and then design your instruction off of that. And every once in a while, you come up with this brilliant idea, maybe in the middle of the night, that changes instruction for the next day. But most days that doesn't happen, and that kind of leads into the next bolded item, is the systematic development of learning experiences. I'm sure many of you, or all of you, can wing a day of instruction in your class, but you couldn't wing it every day and be effective, because you need to be thoughtful and deliberate. You have 180 days to build up kids in content and skills, to get them ready for the next step, get them ready for the world. And so we need to be systematic, and we need to be focused on how we're going to find, how are we going to meet our end goals for our courses. And this kind of goes off of what I said a few minutes ago on The Simpsons. Quote is, teachers are the architects of learning experience. You get to build, and regardless of all the pressures and the politics and drama or whatever happens at your site or in your department, or whatever happens, whatever those outside factors are, when you close your door, you have those kids for the 50 minutes, 120 minutes, or whatever chunk of time you have, and you get to build that learning environment. And it may be using resources provided, or it may be resources you've created on your own, but you are the architect. And so that's empowering, and you should grab hold of that. We also know it takes time, and so you need to, not build every house all at once. Build pieces of it as you go, and see what works, and see what you like, and see what the students respond to, and then adjust as needed. We are using a few different things we want you to think about, and going back to instructional lenses and things that you need to think about. You have your standards, you have your learners. When using technology, we also want you to think about, how can I bring the fourth season? Where are we using communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking? Critical thinking should be in everything. How are we using those in our lessons, our day-to-day things, and of course any bigger projects you have as well. And then when you're using technology, where are you on the SAMR model? Now, you've in the previous module or in a previous experience, you've explored probably the 4Cs and SAMR. Substitution, augmentation is where you're enhancing learning. You're using the technology um, to make things a little more efficient, whether it's just collecting the work or whether it's giving kids, accessibility tools, whether you're using spell check, sharing documents, those types of things. We're enhancing what happens. And then on the other side, other side of the line is where we start transforming the experience for students. So modification and redefinition is where you're really doing things you couldn't have done previously in a face-to-face classroom. Traditional paper-based, book-based classroom. Modification and redefinition takes things to that sort of next level. And so substitution, augmentation aren't bad. They're just, it's just not that's not the end. All right, and you're probably going to do a lot of substituting and augmenting in your class with technology, but we're kind of pushing you to go a little bit further. So these instructional lenses are in addition to, of course, again, the learners, the standards, other things you have to consider. Now, when you're actually getting down to design the lesson, we have a little cycle that we like to use. And that's this engage, explore, apply. So the first level is engage. What's the hook? What's the context? What are the essential questions? Why should kids care? Because most of them need to have a reason to care about your class. And it's not about you, it's about their teenagers. They'd rather be doing something else. And so trying to get them bought into the idea into the idea of your class as a whole, and then on any given day. So that's the engaging piece. What's drawing them in? What's making them focus and be present? The second is explore. So this is, okay, you have those content standards or those skills that you want to develop. How are they exploring those? How are they getting practice with those? It could be research. It could be some guided practice. It could be, some discussions, among peers and in small groups or big groups, whatever it happens to be. Searching through websites, doing online simulations. And this is where you might include some scaffolds, talking about differentiating. You could have a guide that students could do or not do, a worksheet or something that helps them understand the process, breaks it down into pieces maybe through a graphic organizer. Or it could be that you're just telling them to reminding them that they can look up words or they can translate words if they need to using Read and Write Google. The final section is the apply. This is where they take the ideas, again, content, skills, and then demonstrate that they've learned it, that they've mastered it. It could be any number of things that they have do. Traditionally, we have tests and quizzes, essays in this category, in the apply section, but you can also have them be making things, use creative, the creative tools of the web to have them make something small. It doesn't, you could do a 1-day project or a 2-day project. It doesn't always have to be a multi-week or something larger. But how are kids demonstrating their learning? That's sort of the foundation here of digital lesson design. We need to be deliberate, and we need to think of a structure that really gets kids into this cycle of learning, and that we don't end at explore. We end at where they're applying their learning and showing that they've mastered an idea. And if not, then what happens? So they go back to a section of the explore. Is there an alternative activity? And that's things that you can build into your lesson at a later time. All right, thanks for listening, and good luck moving on to the next section.